Hey guys, welcome and welcome back to my channel. I hope you guys are well and I hope you guys are staying safe. Today's video I'm going to be showing you how to make a simple box top or just a regular top. It's very beginner friendly, so if you're a beginner, this video is for you. Definitely keep watching. If you're new here, welcome. You guys don't forget to hit the subscribe button, okay? And to all my OGs, welcome back. I missed you guys. Thank you so much for holding down the fort. Enjoy the video, guys. For this project, you need anything from 1 yard 1/4 to 2 yards. I ended up using a little bit under 1.5 yards. And for this, you want to fold your fabric into two so that you have a folded edge on one side and a separated edge on the other side. Then you want to go ahead and fold it one more time so that the folded edge is resting on the separated edge. However, you want to make sure that it's exactly like I'm showing you now, so that you have about 1.5 inches to 2 inches space from the folded edge to the separated edge. As you can see, I went ahead to pin that down, and that will be my center front resting against my center back so that I can have my zip allowance. Next, go ahead and mark a top line, which is where you start all your measurements from. So starting from the top of the fabric, which is the finished edge from the factory, you want to go ahead and mark 3 centimeters to 4 centimeters, and that is your top line. Now from the top line, the next thing you want to do is you want to mark your blouse length, and this is a vertical measurement. For me, the blouse length that I used was about 25 to 26 inches. However, feel free to use anything that you want. 26 inches is probably the most that you could use, because then that's becoming, too long, except you are really tall. After marking your desired blouse length like I'm doing, you need to add your sewing allowance or your hemming allowance. Remember that you're going to hem the bottom of the blouse. So go ahead and connect the blouse length, and then go ahead and add the desired blouse hemming allowance. Now, because I want to hem my blouse, with a fat hem, I need to add an allowance of about 2.5 inches. However, an allowance of 1.5 inches will be ideal for anything that is thin or regular. After adding the hemming allowance, go ahead and cut along the lines that you've just marked for the hemming allowance. Now, the reason why I say that is that whatever is left, you use that for your sleeves so you don't waste the fabric, and then you also know what you're working with. So at this point, this is what I'm working with. I've marked the top line, which is where I'll start all my measurements from up until the end of the hemming allowance. Next, we need to measure the back measurement. Now, to do this, you want to start all your measurements from the center front fold. So note, I'm not starting from the center back that is separated. I'm starting from the center front fold where my measuring tape is, and I'm measuring half the back measurement plus 1/2 inch sewing allowance. After marking that point, the next thing you want to do is you want to mark your neckline. The first thing you want to mark is your neck width, and the neck width measurement that I'm using is 3.5 or 4 inches, depending on you. I went with the 3.5 inches. Then you also want to mark your neck depth. For the neck depth, I advise 4 inches. So I went ahead to draw a curve to connect my neck width to my neck depth measurement. It's important to mention that the neck curve that you've just drawn is for the front neck. Now we need to sort out the back neck. For the back neck, you want to draw a neck depth of 2.5 inches. It's shorter than the front neck, and then you want to connect it to the same point on the neck width. Starting from the top line, go ahead and put in your vertical measurements. So your vertical measurements will be your shoulder to bust point, your shoulder to waist, and of course we already have our blouse length. So as you can see, I'm marking my shoulder to bust point first, and then I'm marking my shoulder to my waist or my front body length measurement. Next, we need to get the armhole depth, and to do that, you need to measure 3.5 inches above your shoulder to bust point measurement. This will give you your armhole depth. Now, after marking the point for my armhole depth, the next thing to do is to mark the exact measurement that I had for half my back measurement at the armhole depth point. So as you can see, whatever I marked at the top line horizontally, I'm marking the same thing at the armhole depth line. This is important because it serves as a guide for us drawing the armhole curve. After drawing the armhole guide, go ahead and draw in the curve as shown. As you can see, Somewhere towards the mid armhole point, I went in by 1/2 inch, and that's because your armhole curve is actually like that in real life, so it just goes in a little bit. So go ahead and draw in your curve as shown. Next, we need to put in the horizontal measurements. Starting at the point that has the shoulder to bust point mark, you want to go ahead and put in 1/4 of your bust measurement plus ease of 1 inch and a sewing allowance of 1 inch. So exactly you're doing 1/4 of the bust point measurement plus 2 inches at the very least. However, for me, I ended up using 2.5 inches because I needed my top a little bit free. At the waist, you want to repeat the same thing. However, I recommend adding a bit more ease at the waist. So again, you want to measure 1/4 of your waist measurement plus 1 inch for the initial ease, another 1 inch for the recommended ease, and then 1 inch for the sewing allowance. So basically to the waist, you'll probably be adding about anything from 2.5 to 3 inches. And as you can see, it's not the exact same thing. It goes in a little bit. So just so that it goes in a little bit, okay? And then at the hem, you want to go ahead and mark whatever you had at your bust measurement, or even better, your hip measurement divided by 4 plus 2 inches allowance. Next, we need to measure the zip allowance. However, there's no zipper for this top. So starting from the point where you have the center front fold, you want to measure 1 inch to your right. You want to measure 1 inch outwards. So go ahead and mark 1 inch all the way as shown. And then you want to go ahead and draw it in with a line so that your lines are like, just very obvious. After that, we're going to go ahead and cut out our top piece. It's not ready to be used. So go ahead and cut out along the marked lines as shown. Alright guys, before you continue cutting, one of the details that I forgot is the shoulder slants. So as you can see, when you get to the shoulder, what you want to do is along the shoulder curve, you want to mark 1/2 inch allowance in. So basically from the top line, you want to mark 1/2 inch allowance. After you mark the 1/2 inch point, you want to draw a shoulder slant up until the neck depth area, and then you want to add 1/2 inch sewing allowance at the top of that slant. Then you go ahead and cut along this, cutting the top line. After cutting it all out, this is what your pieces should look like. Guys, please remember to pin as much as possible. If you need to pin, don't be afraid of pinning. Don't be like me. Pin as much as you need to. To start off, we're going to sort out the necklines, and for that we need bias strips. If you don't know how to cut out bias strips and how to make your own bias strips, go ahead and watch out the video that I have on how to make bias strips. I have put a link in the icons above as well as in the description bar below. Also, if you prefer, you can always buy your own bias strip. They're store ready-made ones. However, I prefer to make mine. Separate the front and back pieces and go ahead and mark the wrong side just like I'm doing now. We're going to start off with the front piece, and the first thing we want to do is we want to sort out the neckline with the bias strip. Again, if you haven't seen my video on how to finish necklines, go ahead and watch it. I put a link in the icons above as well as in the description bar, so please go ahead and watch the video. Now that the front neckline is done, we're going to move on to the back pieces. So go ahead and grab your back piece, and then you want to place it on the table. Make sure that the right sides are facing each other. Then you want to start with the center back or the zip allowance area. Starting from the hem, we're going to sew it all the way to the top. However, you need to know what point you want to sew to. So starting from the top, I recommend that you mark 7 to 9 inches, and then where you have your point, you sew from there all the way to the hem, and you want to be sewing on 1 inch sewing allowance. So go ahead and sew that in place, and then next we move on to the neckline. For the back neckline, you want to sew your bias strip onto the front as shown, and then we're going to use it to turn the front neckline so that we have a neat and seamless shoulder slant. Start off the back bias neckline as you would any other neckline. So you go ahead and sew the bias onto the right side of the neckline. And after doing that, I'm going to show you guys how to turn it with the front one. So as you can see, I have the right side now, the bias is to the left and the fabric is on the other side. You want to go ahead and reach for your fronts and then place it so that the right sides are facing each other. So it's very important that you look at this part properly. You want to place the front piece on the back piece so that the right sides are facing each other. However, you're not placing it at the beginning of the bias, you're placing it where the bias joins the neckline, literally at that point. So you place it there and you pin it in place. As you can see, then you turn your bias over so that it looks like a sandwich. So you place that in there, turn the bias over like a sandwich, and then you fold it in. If you follow the steps that I've shown in this video, you'll be able to get it. After doing that, you're welcome to pin it all the way through and then sew in your shoulder slants. As you can see, I'm not pinning, but please make it a habit to pin. After sewing the pieces together, this is what it looks like. So as you can see, it looks seamless already, but however, you might not see the effect properly yet. So go ahead and cut off that excess piece and then go ahead and flip it over so that it looks nice. That's what it looks like. So it basically will give you the appearance of a continuous stitch from the front neckline, and that's why I like it. However, if it's too difficult, you can join normally, but this gives you a neater and a better appearance. Go ahead and finish your bias as you normally would by folding it in and just sewing, but like I said, this just gives you a continuous look and finished look. Go ahead and finish it up as you normally would. For those of you who missed it the first time, I'm going to repeat it again on the other side. So I've got the other side of the back piece or the back neckline, and that's the right side that I'm showing you guys now. So go ahead and place the front neckline on it so that the right sides are facing each other. Again, you want to place it at the point where the neckline meets the bias strip, and then like a sandwich, you want to place the bias strip over it so that it covers it up. Okay, like I said, feel free to use your pins and hold your pieces in place if you need to. Don't be like me. And then go ahead and sew it in place on 1/2 inch sewing allowance. After sewing the shoulder on the second side, you want to make sure that you finish the bias as well. And for me, I find it easier doing the bias from the end when I'm on this side. So I don't know what works for you, but please go ahead and do what works for you. As you can see, I started to sew it from the front neckline area, but it wasn't comfortable because I'm right-handed. So I literally had to start at the end, and that's what I did. So go ahead and do what works for you. After sewing the shoulders, the next thing to do is to join the sides, and this is really easy. You want to go ahead and pin the sides together, and then you want to go ahead and sew it on 1 inch following the shape. So go ahead and mark your 1 inch sewing allowance all the way from the armpit area to the hem, and then go ahead and sew it in place. Repeat the same thing for the other side as well. After sewing the sides, the next thing you want to do is you want to sort out the hem. And like I said earlier, depending on what allowance you left and how you want your hem to be, you can either fold in 1/2 inch and then fold it over again by 1/2 inch. So that way you have a thin regular hem. However, you can have a thick hem. And for me, I ended up leaving about 2.5 inches for my hem allowance. That gave me the ability to fold 1/2 inch and then fold it over, as you can see. I went ahead to sew the entire hem, making sure that I'm spreading out all the seams that I have. This point, the next thing to do is to measure the armhole so that we can cut out the sleeves. And remember that for the sleeves, we'll be using the remaining fabric that we had cut from the bottom. So go ahead and measure your sleeves, starting from the allowances or from the sewing points that you have. After measuring the sleeve, it's now time to cut the sleeve. So go ahead and fold your fabric into 2 and then fold it over again so that you have folded it into a total of 4, basically, which is what I'm doing. And then the next thing to do is to start drafting your sleeve measurement. Similarly to the top, I went ahead to draw a top line, which served as a guide for me, and my top line was essentially the fabric end. So I probably didn't draw anything, but I used the fabric end as a gauge. If you need to draw a top line, please go for it because it makes your work easier. Now, if you haven't seen my video on how to draw a sleeve, on how to cut a sleeve, please go ahead and watch that video, as you'll find it very helpful. The first thing I did was I marked my sleeve length, which was about 7 inches, and then I marked my allowance of 2.5 inches. I wanted to keep the allowance consistent with what I had at the hem of the top. Now, after marking the allowance from the top, I marked my armhole length. Whatever I measured from the armhole, I marked that horizontally at the top. And from that point, I dropped down by 5 inches and went ahead to drawing the sleeve curve. Like I said, this video is not that detailed on the sleeve, but if you need a detailed tutorial on how to mark your sleeve, please go ahead and watch that video. I'll put the link in the description bar as well as in the iCard. It's a very detailed tutorial on how to cut your sleeves. After drafting and marking out the sleeves, go ahead and cut it out as shown. Remember to always notch your sleeve crown. This will help you match it with your shoulder slant. So go ahead and give the sleeve crown a notch. After notching your sleeve crown, it's also important to mark the wrong side. So as it is, I went ahead to put an X on the wrong side. Now this is what the sleeve looked like. The next thing to do is to decide how you want your sleeve. Like I said, you can decide to hem your sleeve normally by folding it 1/2 inch twice, or you can decide to do a proper hem like we've done. However, there's a third option. You can decide to do a turn-up sleeve. For that, you can fold in 1/2 inch and then sew that down and then fold it over one more time, and that will give you like a turn-up sleeve. So I'm going to show you guys how that is done. So for this one, I went ahead to do a turn-up sleeve, and this is what it looks like. As you can see, I folded it over and then I folded it over one more time and stitched it in place. Now the problem with this is that you can see my stitch lines from, the first 1/2 inch stitch, and the alternative to that, if you don't want to see stitch lines, is to use hemming like a hemming glue, this hemming glue. Now it's called different names, but what you want to do is you want to cut out 1/2 inch and then paste it on the right side and just fold it over and iron it in place. That way you will have a very clean finish and you will have no stitches like I have on mine. After deciding what you want to do with the hem of your sleeve, so whether you want to hem it or you want to do a turn up, go ahead and finish sewing it, and then you want to go ahead and attach it to the sleeve. To attach it to the sleeve, you want to go ahead and pin it in place starting from the side seam. So match the side seam of the sleeve to the side seam of the top, making sure the right sides are facing each other, and then mark the notch of the sleeve to the shoulder slant or the shoulder joining on the top. After doing that, you want to go ahead and pin your sleeve all around, making sure you're easing it in. After doing that, you want to go ahead and sew it in place by 1/2 inch sewing allowance. Repeat this for the second sleeve as well. After sewing the sleeves, this is what your top should look like. At this point, your top is literally finished. The only thing left is for us to make a buttonhole so that we can put in a button. And to do that, you just want to get a little piece of bias from earlier, and then you want to pipe it by just folding it over. So I've gone ahead to pipe my bias by folding it over, and I went ahead to get a button so that I can measure out what I need. So go ahead and fold your bias as shown, and then go ahead and match it with a button, and you're welcome to just adjust it as much as you need, make it bigger or smaller depending on your button size. After finding the perfect size that works for you, you're welcome to pin it in place so that you don't lose that. After pinning the button loop in place on its own, the next thing to do is to attach it onto the top. So go ahead and fold in the 1 inch allowance that we left earlier at the top, and then go ahead and sew in the button loop. After sewing in the button loop and the button, this is what the top looks like. At this point, the top is literally finished. Again, like I said, it's just a simple box top, very basic. And if you want to make it a 2-piece, you're welcome to sew a pair of trousers or a pair of shorts. I have a video showing you how to make simple shorts that are nice, and that way you just make it a 2-piece because you have like shorts and a nice blouse. Alright guys, we've come to the very end of this video. Thank you so much for watching to the end. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope it was worth your while. Again, if you haven't subscribed, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button as well as the notification bell. And if you haven't given this video a thumbs up, please, what are you waiting for? Give this video a thumbs up, share, leave your comments and suggestions in the comment section. Thank you, and I'll catch you guys in 2 weeks.